Hello there and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the
Hi.
community experts about their life journeys and learn from each other. And today we have a conversation with Jess Hobbs, a community architect and storyteller, an artistic idea generator and maker, an avid hiker, a solo parent who loves exploring the outdoors and camping with her kid, and a deeply interesting person to talk to. So, hello, Jess.
Hi there.
Finally, it's been forever. I feel like I know you kind of forever, but finally I am getting to get to know you better. And the
Yeah.
first question is, what usually happens when you have a soccer mom mode activated?
um yeah, so I have a 7-year-old Adrian, and he right now is just, he loves playing, soccer, football for the rest of the world. Um and what soccer mom mode activated is like sweatpants, sweatshirts, pulling the snacks for the team, and carrying balls or equipment. It's a whole nother mode of my life.
Who is usually louder on the field, you or a coach?
Me. Yeah, no, I love it. I know all the names of the kids on the team, and it's, I and some of the other parents just sit there like cheering along, and it's fun. It's good.
Yeah, I totally get it. And tell me a little about your normal goofiness with Adrian.
um yeah, we're two goofballs, and yeah, we either are making crafts and drawing, or um we love Lego building, so there's usually
Mm.
Legos that have taken over both the kitchen table and the dining table. As well as just general goofy weirdness. I really like to support his imagination and his play and his artistic side and his creativity. So usually you'll find us doing something weird, or, he might be taking a break playing Roblox at some point as well.
Yeah, but you can still do some artistic stuff in Roblox for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
What is his favorite mode in Roblox?
um, well, currently the favorite game is one, Doors,
Hmm.
which is kind of a strange one. Like, I usually sit down and like watch it, so I feel like a good parent and I'm not just letting him wander off into these worlds. But some very strange creatures, and the goal is to get through all these doors in a series. I don't totally understand it, but he loves it.
Yeah, I feel like that's exactly how it works in the Roblox world because kids are playing and parents like, I don't know what the hell you're playing in, but if you're good, I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. And it's nice. Like, some of his school friends are his friends, so it's cool when they're online and he gets to play with them and interact in a different way.
Do they have a big team when they're playing together?
Um, there's two teams that are at his school. We've been playing with the same group since he was a kindergartner, and he's second grade now. And it's just gotten bigger and bigger, so we had to divide into two teams. So it's two teams of about 14. And then on the field, because they're not quite full field
Mhm.
playing yet. Um, so they have about 6 players on the field at a time, so including the goalie. So that, they started with pee wee soccer with like 4 kids on the field and no goalie and no scorekeeping. But this year we have a goalie, we're keeping score, we're doing a little bit more strategy. And it's great. It's really great to see him build his skills and learn.
Time to grow, like,
Yeah.
and what is his position?
He loves being striker. So he likes to be up front. Um, he doesn't mind defense, which I love. I played soccer into my 30s, and
Hmm.
I love to be a fullback. So I appreciate that he can see the fun in being, defense.
Have you ever been a goalie?
Mm, Not really in games. I did it a couple times. It's scary being a goalie. It is really scary. It's intimidating. You have this whole field of players coming at you, just trying to get a ball past you, and you have like so much pressure. It's hard. Have you ever been a goalie?
I've never liked, but sometimes when we played like street football, we had a
Yeah.
team like 4 or 5 players and we exchanged like in a turn. Like if we
Yeah.
scored or other team scored, then we changed and another person became a goalie. And I remember once I had a little trick. So I had this roller skate and safety stuff on my hand. So I put it on and I was like, super goalie. I could defeat every ball because I wasn't afraid that I will hurt my hands or something like that.
Yeah.
So that day I really loved being a goalie, but not anymore.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I I how Adrian feel when he scores?
When he's what?
Scores. When
Oh,
he
when he
scores goals.
scores. Um, oh, it's sweet. He's not like, he's not the top scorer, but it's like the first time he scored, he like surprised himself. Like he
Mm.
was like, he's like, I did it. I didn't even know I could do that. I didn't even know I could like get it in there. And it was sweet that he was surprised. And like he's still kind of sweetly humble when he does it. He's still a little surprised. And I appreciate that about him.
And how do you feel about when he scores?
Oh, my arms are up. I'm yelling. I'm screaming. I'm like, good job, buddy.
Yeah. Now I get the real feeling. What does it mean? Soccer mom mode on. Okay, got it. So let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your parents. Who are they?
My parents are, well, you can see those are my grandparents, my mom's
Yeah.
parents. They both grew up in the US. My mom mainly grew up in Oregon and then moved to California pretty early. She wanted to I think she wanted to be closer to the hippie movement, but
Hmm.
moved into a small Central Valley town that was really far from San Francisco. And then my dad grew up in California. He actually grew up partially in the town that I grew up in. So I
Hmm.
grew up in a small town, Sonora, California, which is fairly close to Yosemite. And my dad was an engineer up at Hetch Hetchy, which is all the water and power for San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, Hetch Hetchy actually has a really crazy, weird history in the US, in that like it was this beautiful valley that was part of Yosemite National Park. But they dammed it and filled it for San Francisco's water and power after the earthquake, because
Hmm.
the huge earthquake in 1906, like the most devastating thing about that earthquake was actually the fires, because they
Yeah.
didn't have enough water. So they tried to solve it by creating reservoirs. But it's also what spawned the Sierra Club. John Muir headed that up. And it's also kind of an interesting history of land use um, and also, land use and land that's been taken from um, Native Americans as well. And so it's a very complicated, crazy history that I know far too much about because my dad worked there and I kind of dove into it. I love doing that. I love jumping into things and really diving in and finding the history of it. So that's a little bit about my parents and the history of Hetchy.
Do you know how your parents met?
Yeah, they met at an encounter group, which was a very 70s thing that we're
Uh,
like trying to get men and women to connect. It was sort of the Tinder of their times.
at least it worked, you
Yeah,
know?
it worked. It worked. But what it was my mom's friend Fred
Mm.
was the leader of these groups, and he kind of put the word out to my mom. He's like, I don't think I have enough women to have it balanced in this group. And so she actually came because it was her friend running it. And my dad, who is or was my dad passed away a few
Mm.
years ago, but he was a lovely but very introverted, shy person. And so he was going to this this encounter group to try to like stretch himself a little bit and meet some new people. And he met my mom there. And, you know, he got over his shyness and at least asked her out.
Mm.
And then the first date apparently was really bad, but the second date was really good. And they sort of just stayed together since then.
But it was not that bad because
Yeah,
usually if the first date is super bad, like there is no second
I
date.
know.
So,
There must have been something there. So, yeah. And they lived in San Francisco for a while he worked for
Mhm.
um, the he was a engineer here in the city, and then he was never a city guy. And so when he was able to transfer up to Hetchetty, which is up in the mountains, they moved up there.
Why he never was a city guy?
I think it's like he doesn't really like the compactness of
Mhm.
city. He
Mm.
likes space. He likes, you know, he likes the outdoors. I mean, I grew up backpacking. Um, yeah, he just never liked the density of a city.
What about you?
Um, if I could pick, I would be out in the country. But right now, just life as it is, I'm in San Francisco. And I don't know, I feel like I'm a little bit more flexible than he was. And I enjoy being in San Francisco. I enjoy being here. But I do appreciate and spend a lot of time up in the mountains and camping and as well.
What do you love the most about your parents?
Um, I think I loved, I grew up in a small town, but I also grew up, we built our own house. There was a lot of flexibility for me to be who I wanted to be. You know, there they didn't put a lot of demands on me, like
Mm.
expectations of like, well, I think you need to be this. I think my dad always wanted me to be an engineer, but when I started making really big art that was complicated and needed engineering, he's like,
Mm.
oh, okay, I get that.
At least it needed engineer. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, okay, I see where you're going with this.
It's so fun. And when did you understand that you love art?
um, I mean, I think I sort of understood that or began to really understand that when I was high school age. So in my mid to late teens, because I was a good student and I was in the US kind of like um, AP classes, which are kind of the, high level classes. Um, but I had a conflict in my schedule between doing art and
Hmm.
being in an AP chemistry class, and I chose the art class. So I kind of knew then that art was going to be important in my life, and I wanted to prioritize it.
What is your favorite form of art?
Oh. um, I mean, usually I would say it's an immersive experience. Like I like art that you can move through or move around. So I would say art that's sculptural, art that's interactive. I might be biased because it's the kind of art I love to make, but I like art that feels like it can encompass you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Tell me a little about the famous project you've done with third graders, TweetHouse. What is the backstory?
So that was I worked on that project. I was not the creators behind that are a woman named Jennifer Blakesley and a woman named Elizabeth Marley. But TweetHouse was a part of the nonprofit that we started in 2010 called Flux Foundation. But TweetHouse was in an amazing project these two women built out. And the idea was how do you sort of help third graders understand the idea of public art? And so TweetHouse is taking a nest box, which the Audubon Society created for the Western bluebird, which was endangered in urban populations. And they're gorgeous little bluebirds. They're so dainty and sweet, but they were non-existent. I think it was about 2004 is when the Audubon Society started pushing out these nest boxes, and all the nesting pairs were then coming back into urban spaces. And it was great because in our cities, we don't keep old trees. We don't keep old trees where cavity nesters like the Western bluebird live. And so we have to create new spaces, these little nest boxes. So Elizabeth and Jen were like, how can we take the building of this nest box, really showcase ideas of public art making, architecture, collaboration to third graders? And so, we brought in biologists that talked about the biology of the bird, and the bird was presented as the client, like, you're the architect, you're the group working as an architecture firm, how would you build this for your client? And so they learned about the needs, and then they learned about where they could go, and then they learned about the materials they could use to make it more attractive. And then they did cardboard designs and paper designs, and then we helped them build out the wood versions. And then we as a organization connected with Oakland Parks and Recs, and we're able to put these in public parks.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing way to learn about nature and also help nature and have fun, and even learn about clients and learn how to deal with them. But I wonder, why third graders?
I think it was like we had an opportunity to work with this school. There's a really interesting school in Oakland, California called Park Day. It is a private school, but they were really open to the idea of us coming in for 10 weeks and doing this program for the kids. And, sometimes it's just like who you're connected to. And like Elizabeth and Jen were connected to this third grade class, and it happened like that. And it was a great way to test it out and like see kind of their learning level, and, what they could take in as third graders as well.
I would love to know the story of those third graders who you've impacted, like whether they became an artist or whether they became architects, or like, it's really interesting. Do you know anything about them?
I don't know. Like, it's hard sometimes. You do these programs and then you kind of like leave it with them, and you don't always have the ability to follow up. I'm curious about stuff like that. It's like, I've seen amazing things happen to people, even in like the larger scale projects that are mainly adult created. I've seen people like transformed by the process of doing art in collaboration. I've seen them like come in like with one sort of set of ideas about life, and then be transformed and opened up and like go on and move on and do incredible things.
Can you share some example of this kind of transformation, maybe without names and like?
Well, I can use this name because he wrote a book about it.
Okay.
This Hassan El Taib, we were building one of our larger scale projects called Fishbug. And, he had no real connection to us. He was giving a ride cross country to a woman who was living at the art space that we were building at. And we were kind of in full production mode. We were in the process of like um, the final kind of sort of finishing process before we took it out to Burning Man. And he came in and he was just like, what is going on? And I wasn't there when it initially happened, but he was like this. And I think somebody was working on something. They're like, hey, can you come over here for a second and like help me out in this? And he did. And he stayed.
Wow.
And what was really beautiful is like I came in that day. I'm like, who's the new person? And everybody was just like, oh, it's Hassan. It was just like he was meant to be there. Like he had been there all along. And I was able to get a ticket for him. Because sometimes you want to do that. You want to say thank you, like these unexpected people who come in. And I was able to give that to him so he could come out with us and experience the piece and experience sort of the completion of the piece by the people coming and interacting with it. And what was lovely is that started a process of real transformation for him. He had been on this road trip because he was trying to kind of find himself. He'd been going through some stuff, and he landed in the middle of this crazy art project, and then went with us to the festival to install it and kind of experience the weirdness of the Burning Man festival itself. And what was wonderful is like he was able to kind of see more possibilities. He was able to sort of shift from the space he had been in, and then kind of move more towards what was really kind of in his heart. He's an amazing musician. He started making music. He started playing. He recorded albums. He wrote a whole book about his experience of transformation.
Wow.
He's gone on to do all this amazing political work and advocacy work. And it's just, would he have become that person? Maybe. But I love that, like, the disruption of his norm.
Yeah.
He was able to find things in himself that maybe he was blinded to otherwise. And I just love, I love the person he's become. He's doing beautiful work in the world.
Do you believe in fate?
Sometimes I do, sometimes it's like, but I also think fate is being aware of opportunity when it lands close enough or nearby, or at least being open to it. I think fate is a bit of a mixture of luck and awareness. And not just like that person's luck and awareness, but it also takes the community that can kind of see this person and maybe even encourage that within that person. So it also takes, it takes both sides.
Yeah, exactly. I've recently listened to Andrew Huberman's podcast, and they were talking about like being open, exactly what you're talking about, awareness, being open to things. And they were talking about romantic relationships, like if somebody wants to meet someone, and then like why I can't meet anyone. And there was an example, like if you are in the shop and somebody like asking you something, like that's an opportunity to continue the conversation. And then like if you are not open to this opportunity, then why do you say that you can't meet anyone? So I totally get what you're talking about. And I feel like it's still both. Something is kind of fate, but if you are doing nothing, you will never meet it.
Yeah.
I wonder, why do you like fire?
Well, I think fundamentally it scares me a little bit. And it's that idea of, I have a little fear around it, and I have to push through that fear to experience the beauty and joy. So there's both that. And I think a little bit also like the original fire art, especially from Burning Man, was very male creator dominated. And um, and was just about the explosive fire itself. And, you know, as I joined the group Flaming Lotus Girls, which was one of my core groups I collaborated with, I love the idea that fire became an element. It was just another medium, and it really, we wanted it to make sense. We wanted it not just to be fire for fire's sake, but we wanted it to be the thing that brought the sculpture to life, and that gave it that little edge of fear. And that experiencing our sculptures kind of had that element of like pushing through fear to experience something.
How did you join the Flame and Lotus Girls?
Maybe fate for this one. I was part of a space in San Francisco called Cell Space, collaborative, explorative learning labs. And I was one of the directors of the gallery there. And it was an amazing space. It was like events and creators and dance, and there was like a roller skating night, and it was just like a great, amazing, weird, wacky art space. And it also had a big metal shop in the back. And some of the people I knew from the space were, part of the original group that made the original sculpture, which has now since been disassembled, but it was called the Flaming Lotus, and that's where the group took its name. And I was kind of like around the sculpture as it was being created. I wasn't necessarily creator of the very first one, but I had friends that were part of it, and they just kept on going, come in, create, build. And that's yeah, I just was coerced enough that I came in and started playing with metal and welding and doing things that I didn't know how to do. But the space was really a space of permission. So it wasn't like, oh, you don't know how to do that. It was, are you open to learning this? If you are, then teaching's easy. You just have to be open to learning. And I'm like, oh, I can learn. And it was a really welcoming, really friendly, inviting space. And that's how I jumped into interactive fire art.
What is the process of creating looks like for you?
It can be different. I mean, I still do my own art. It's usually photography based. That's what my degree is. But especially if you're working with a collaborative group, it can differ. With like the Flaming Lotus Girls, what that can look like is somebody has an idea. Somebody's like, I have an idea about, creating a monumental serpent. And that idea is kind of brought to the group, and the group, maybe a small collection of the group sort of gathers around that idea, builds it out, proposes it. But even once it's proposed and accepted to the group has permission to transform it even then. Like, hey, we like this idea, but there's still something missing in the design, or there's something that would be additive that's not here yet. And so what's really interesting about the collaborative design process is it's not about the individual artist. What I've always loved about the collaborative art process is that the piece is by the group, whether it's Flaming Lotus Girls, whether, the other group I work with, Flux Foundation, it's by the group. And then everybody who touches it, who draws it, who cooks food for the people building it, everybody who's kind of under that umbrella can call themselves an artist of the piece and can have some affinity and ownership of it. And that's what I really value about the art I've created. Is it, what I love most of all is that it doesn't have my name on it. You know, I might be a leader in it. I might be just a builder in the project. But I'm a part of a collection of people that feel connected to it.
Sounds very much like community.
I know. Even my art I do in community.
Communities everywhere. And you told about cooking food. So who usually cooks food?
Often we have somebody who cooks food for the group, or and you know, that can be many people over the years, you know. But it's important, like, especially if you're in the process of building a project out in an inhospitable desert.
Yes.
Fueling people's bodies is fundamental. And it's very important to put energy and effort and finances behind that, and also honor the person creating the sustenance. It's really important. And believe me, like, out in the desert, I've had amazing food over the years, cooked by amazing artists themselves. It's ridiculous what's been created out there.
Yeah, it's really super interesting. And I asked because I thought maybe, you know, it was like having a goalie in a soccer team. So maybe you were exchanging one by one. One day you cook, one day somebody else cooks. So
yeah.
nice.
Sometimes some projects that's happened, but it just it's always been more beneficial to have somebody very just dedicated to that. Because otherwise you're, you know, if you're switching out roles, unless it's a very small project, that can usually that can happen, but otherwise people are just tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And still, you know, as I feel like this person is also, as you told, feels as a part of the team, and they also want to create something amazing, you know, like people create amazing, they're creating amazing food. And as you told, that's what you've tried. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm so curious about what was the favorite food that you've tried there?
Oh, geez. Like, was it the paella delivered by scantily clad men? That happened out there one time. Gosh, I mean, it's been like, it's seriously, there's been, you know, ice cream made and delivered. There's been it's honestly, it's hard to say. There's just like, there's been so many like amazing things just cooked out there that I've been able to you know, able to eat, you know. It's unreal, the artistry some people bring out there as a chef. Yeah, I mean, I probably have had better food out there than I've had anywhere else.
Got it. So tell me, why is Miles Morales your and Adrian's favorite web slinger?
Yeah, it was funny. He was like, Adrian was really resistant for a while to watch the first animated movie of it. I think he was resistant because I was trying to encourage him, and anything that mom encourages can be something to resist. And when we sat down and watched it, he was mesmerized by the first animated movie. And it's a gorgeous movie. It's, you know, the animation's amazing. I mean, it's award-winning. The music, the soundtrack, I think he really loved seeing this um, young man, you know, who's still in school, try to wrestle with becoming a hero. I think there's something he connected with there.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's something he really connected with. And I love seeing him like identify with the character, and like the soundtrack was on loop ad nauseum. You know, he really just like got into the music and was really excited by it. And it was actually the second one was just released just a few months ago, but that was the first movie we saw back in a theater since COVID. And in our neighborhood, there's a really great theater that also has food, and it was a special showing at 11 in the morning just for like kids. And I think he loved that too, is the whole process of like going back to a theater and like having, you know, I think one of his preschool friends was there even. And he's just really loved it. And I love it like as an adult. Like I love also the animation's amazing. I also like appreciate the diversity in the Miles Morales characters and universe. And I also, you know, I'm a bit of a sci-fi junkie, I have to admit. That's my father's fault. And so I love the whole like multiverse that's part of the storyline.
Yeah. I feel like there are so many thoughts and conversations and movie and animational movies about multiverse that I'm starting believing in it myself. Yeah. So I still wonder, and like what can happen if like what's another Yuri doing somewhere out there? Like have you seen the small I saw it on YouTube, small video called 1 minute Wayback Machine or something like that?
I'll have to watch it.
Okay, I won't spoil it because like I will try to find it and send you a link. I can't promise because like I feel like I've lost this link myself, but I will try to do that. And the idea of that was that every time you make a decision, it means that you create two parallel lines. Like if you have to choose like yes or no, if you say yes, you have like one line, no, it's another line, and you at this moment you create parallel universes. And it's really exciting. And I feel like, you know, I have no idea if it's real, but I hope it's real because it's making things funnier. But do you ever cry when you watch movies or animational movies?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, there's some movies that are like, you know, that can really get to me. Offhand, I can't think of a good one right now. But yeah, I can be a bit of a sap, especially like if it's a good tearjerker. Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. So, what is your favorite outdoor activity?
I mean, I love hiking. You know, I grew up backpacking. Like in the summers, my parents, like we didn't take, you know, what I thought to be traditional vacations. Like we didn't go travel in Europe, and we didn't go like on planes. And, you know, I think that was my fantasy of what I thought was normal. But no, we would strap on backpacks and like go hike for 3 weeks in the Sierra Nevadas. And at the time I was like, oh, you know, especially when I was a teenager, like, oh my God, why can't we do something normal? But now, you know, in my adult years, I'm really grateful that like, that we saw the world in that way. And it wasn't just like the world. We weren't going in any expansive space. It was really mainly along the Sierra Nevada mountains here in California. But that pace of walking, that noticing, that ability to pause and just really take in your environment was the gift that that process gave me. And I love, I still love doing that now. I love doing it with my kid, even as we're just like walking around the streets in San Francisco. Like yesterday, we got out of the car from school pickup and there was a hummingbird and we hung out on the street, like watching the hummingbird for, 3 or 5 minutes and like, watching where it went, trying to find like its nest. And I love what the natural world, even in an urban environment, what natural world still exists here. And how even those little moments we can allow ourselves to pause.
It's fun. I recently went walking my dog and I met a frog. Like we're living like near the lake. Like it's like a small lake in the park, but still it's like a road with cars and like a really, I would say, large distance between us and lake. And then it was a frog and I was like, what the hell are you doing here? And the funny thing that I saw it, my dog didn't see it even. It was weird. But then when we were coming back from the walk, it was eating a worm. It was so fun. And when I saw it like for the second time, I thought that its tongue were out. But no, then I just come closer and then, oh, it's a worm. Okay, you found yourself food. Good for you.
Yeah.
So, I totally understand. Like it's a little weird, but I'm also like very much became very much into the nature and like what happens, like how it was a very weird situation. But once I was just sitting for 5 minutes and watching the snail. So it's like crazy, but that's to the point that I totally get it. By the way, did you find the nest?
We didn't find the nest. We found where we think it is. There's like outside our house, one of the trees is one of those bottle brush trees. They have big red fuzzy flower things that hang down. I think they're actually native to Australia, but we think it's in that one because we know it likes that tree and we've seen it in there a lot. So we think it's there. Yeah.
To investigate it, go spot it once again. And tell me about one of the memories that come into your mind right now out of your childhood backpack adventures.
Well, I remember one trip where I think it was about 3 weeks, 50 miles, where we hiked and stayed the night on top of Mount Whitney, which is the highest mountain in the 48 states, the contiguous states. Denali in Alaska is actually it's argue whether it's Denali in Alaska or the volcano in Hawaii being the tallest. But Mount Whitney is the tallest in the lower 48 states. And we took like a 50-mile loop in and then hiked up the backside of Whitney. And I just remember kind of cresting the top of it because it's barren. There's like no trees there. There's an old hut built by some wilderness society back in the day that, where somebody can stay. There's like one latrine on top that most of the wood's been, taken away to build fires on top, even though you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And then there's all these little, like small little rock shelters built the size for tents because it's freezing on top of there. And the wind, because there's nothing to stop anything, it just howls all night. And of course, my parents were like, of course we're spending the night on top.
Of course, yeah.
I'm just like, why are you making us suffer? But no, I remember it was like, it's a very unique experience. And I remember because there's a military base that's not too far from there. Right as we crested, there was a jet that buzzed like beneath the level of the mountain. You could like see the pilot. It was very bizarre. But I
Wow.
remember that whole experience. And I remember like spending the night on top. I remember like all the people we met, like, some man from Switzerland who was like at, you know, at sea level landed in San Francisco and within 2 days was on top of Mount Whitney. That's 16,000 feet from sea level, and was on top, like cracking a beer open. I remember like meeting characters like that, or just like, the guy that climbed the mountain way too late at night. And we're like, oh my goodness, we have to take care of him. And, we fed him with hot Jello and gave him a flashlight because he insisted on going back down. Uh, and I won't confirm or deny if there were some fireworks shot off the mountain that night. But I remember a very interesting day and night, just staying up there and experiencing like who are all the people that came up the mountain and hiked up there and joined us up there. And we were the only crazy people that stayed the night up there.
What did stars look like on the top of the mountain?
Amazing, because you're far enough into the Sierras that there's not all the light pollution.
Yeah.
And you really do see the Milky Way and you see everything. And you forget that exists above our head because so often we're in spaces that have too much light pollution.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. It's amazing that that's above our head every night, but it's often hard to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I can only imagine, because usually I'm like somewhere in the city, and even on the darkest night it still like feels like it's just a little darker than on a daylight. So
Yeah.
what do you usually do on those nowhere in particular kind of days?
I love you. That's one of my photos I took recently. I thought it was funny. So San Francisco has that, has the F line, which is all the restored trolleys. It's actually really gorgeous. It's this like lovely historic transit that's like all these, well, they're not from around the world except for the Italian ones, but they've been painted as if they were the transits from that era, and they're all restored cars. And yeah, one of them had this message one day, just like, usually it says like Market Street, but that one that day just said nowhere in particular. And I love the humor in that, whether that was, supposed to be that way or not. I love the sort of tongue-in-cheek and playfulness of, a city infrastructure, like our major transit system, kind of being very philosophical. Like, I'm going nowhere in particular today.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated that for the character of what I love about San Francisco is it, it still has weirdness, it's still fun and interesting and playful. And I appreciate when I can see that.
When you go outside, do you always have a goal, or do you sometimes go nowhere in particular?
These days, I often have a goal, but I do try to have walks that are just nowhere in particular. Whether it's just in my neighborhood, because I often find things or see things that I don't see otherwise, because I don't have an agenda. I'm not like rushing to a meeting. I'm not rushing to pick up my kid. I'm not rushing to soccer practice. I'm not, I'm not on my way to anywhere. And I love it because I find things that I wouldn't see otherwise. Um, whether it's a mural on a house, whether it's you know, my neighbor has this little embedded medallion in front of their house that I just noticed, and I've probably walked by it, I don't know, a few hundred times. And I have to write down the saying, but it's like a little
Mm,
quote. It's like in a spiral. And it's just, why put it there? And I love that it's there because it's art, it's creativity, it's expression. Um, I love the nowhere in particular days or wanders because that's usually what I find.
yeah. Yeah. I just asked you because I was thinking myself about the answer to this question, and I have no idea because like I feel like it was so many years ago when I was going nowhere in particular. I feel like I'm always going somewhere. I'm
Yeah.
always like have like do this, do this, do this. Ah, it's crazy, crazy
Yeah.
adult's life. Oh my God.
I know. I know. And it's hard. It's hard to fit those in, but like every time I do it, it's like one of those moments where you're like, oh, duh, I should know this. Why
Mm,
don't I remember this? Every time I do it, there's some strange sweetness, fun, interesting thing that either happens or that I see, whether it's a conversation with a stranger, whether it's seen something that I've never paid attention to enough, but it's always been there. Um, yeah. And it's like, I need to like plan for these, but then maybe that defeats the purpose.
yeah, exactly. You
Yeah.
know, Jess, I really wish to have the sky as the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So let's
Ah,
jump to the rapid fire questions. Are you
uh-oh.
ready?
I'm ready.
So, Flaming Lotus Girls or Flux Foundation?
Don't make me choose. I mean, Flex Foundation, because it's the one of the ones that I was the founder of.
Got
But
it.
I can't choose, to be honest.
Yeah, you can cheat, you know, I choose both. Hammock or sofa?
Hammock.
What are your favorite color and song?
Uh, Purple. Oh, I'm one of those people that doesn't have a favorite song. I I really love the work of Eric Satie. So I'm going to pick like a composer or musician. I don't have a favorite song.
Got it. If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Mm. Super strength is the one that's just slightly ahead. Yeah.
Who do you learn from in the community world? Name just one person.
Rosie Sherry. That's easy.
Name two people who I should definitely reach out and have this conversation with.
Oh my God. Okay. Um, have you talked to Rosie? Have you done one of these? Okay.
But it counts, you know, it
Uh,
counts.
Um, have you talked to Jeff? Jeph? Jeff? And I'm forgetting his last name.
Jeff Tabu?
Yeah. Have you talked to
Recently.
him?
Recently.
Okay.
But it also counts. You can still do a try, or we can finish with them. It's up
Yeah.
to you.
Um, mm. What about Deb Shell?
3 out of 3.
I
Which
was
also amazing,
yeah,
you know.
yeah,
So you
yeah.
can also check those their stories. And is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
Mm, why I was on the Colbert Report.
Why?
One of the weird things I've done in the world is plan a 3-day alternative energy race from Berkeley to Las Vegas.
Hmm.
Um, so it was 3 days of racing with cars that did not have uh, oil-based fuel. And Stephen Colbert, one of their writers, had gone to UC Berkeley, and he always paid attention for weird stuff coming from there. And so he picked up the story and he told the story of our weird little race. And I love that he sort of started it out with like in the liberal Gomorrah of Berkeley, California. And he told the story of our weird event. And I love that. Somehow, I respect him as a creator and as a person. So I appreciate that he picked up on our weird little adventure.
And also, what was then the most unusual fuel people used?
Let's see, we had veggie oil, steam, and wood. Wood is probably the one that people were like weird. But that was my alternative energy company that I co-founded, was based in trash to fuel using gasification process to break it down. And that's what this truck, this really amazing crew from Alabama, they ran on gasification, which was the process of breaking down wood into fuel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Yeah, and thank you very much for sharing that. And Jess, I feel like you were on my mind for so long time, but it was always like I was always somewhere out there. And you know how it always looks like whereas I remember this as Taylor told it, like friend flirting. So we always somewhere out there, but never here. And finally, like when we had a call with you before this conversation, I was super happy to get to know you better. You opened to me as a new person, because previously I knew you as a person, as a professional, then as a human being, and now even like as a great human being. and yeah, just thank you very much for your time, for your stories. And yeah, you're just an amazing person. So I enjoyed our conversation very much. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate and value you and what you bring to the world as a human. And so I love being here with you. It's been great.
Thank you very much, Jess, and see you in the community world. And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button or 5 stars and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.